Hello, it is Mr. Shrum, and I am back again with another tutorial. This one is the Introduction to Energy. And the objective in this is that you will explain conservation of energy as it relates to living things and different ecosystems. So now we're going to get into ecosystems, which is, I think, the cooler part of biology, is how living things exist with one another and other non-living things. But here we go for a warm-up question. We're gonna try to define energy and why do living things need energy to continue living their own existence. But the sample answer we're given here, energy is the ability to do work. Living things need energy to grow, develop, move, and perform voluntary and involuntary body processes. So for living things to continue doing work, they need energy to do this work. We are given another question. All organisms have adaptations for their environment. Identify 2 adaptations that could be useful for organisms that live in a desert biome, but not in a tundra biome. So desert, usually a very hot, dry climate, not a lot of water going on in desert biomes. Whereas in a tundra, it's very similar to the desert, except instead of hot temperatures, we're dealing with lower temperatures, very low. So what kind of adaptations would an organism use to exist better in a desert biome? Yeah, here we go. In the sample answer, desert is hot and dry. Tundra is cold and frozen. And in a desert climate, anatomical structures and behaviors that protect an organism from heat are very useful adaptations. Most organisms have adaptations that help them conserve water because water is very scarce in desert climates. And many organisms in the desert are nocturnal because the temperatures at night are not as hot when as compared when the sun is just blazing. I'll skip this intro video, but you can go back and watch it. All right, energy. The universe consists of matter and energy. Energy makes matter move, and it also changes it. Different forms of energy include thermal energy, radiant energy from the sun, like light energy, and electrical energy. Think of batteries, electrical. The world runs on energy. Energy allows us to get out of bed in the morning. We also use energy for all of our daily activities. Almost every biological process we can think of requires energy, but energy itself is a little difficult to define. And that's why we use the definition, the capacity to do work. And let's see what else we can get into. And energy comes in different forms. You've heard of kinetic energy. Well, we also have potential energy. And potential energy means that an object has a certain amount of energy that can be used, but is not currently being used in another form. An object has stored potential energy. And the example we're given here is a ball on top of the hill contains potential energy required for motion. And it's also important to understand this in the human body as well. Energy required for body processes is stored in chemical bonds between biomolecules in the form of potential energy. The body breaks these bonds through chemical reactions and uses the released energy to perform different processes. So our bodies store energy for use later when we need certain processes to take place. So one, we have potential energy. Second, we have kinetic energy. Objects that move from one position to another have kinetic energy, energy in motion. And the potential energy transforms into kinetic energy when a ball is placed on top of the hill and then rolls down the hill. So energy can take on various forms and change into one another. Here we're given a few examples. Mechanical energy. That is the sum of an object's kinetic and potential energies. All moving objects have mechanical energy. The movement within machines is also mechanical energy. So for example, the mechanical energy in moving air and wind rotates wind turbines. The turbines are connected to generators that generate electrical energy. Another form of mechanical energy is sound energy. Mechanical waves pass through an object and make it vibrate, which produces sound. So you can see these instances where it may be easier to capture a certain type of energy and then convert it to a more useful energy in another form. Nuclear. So nuclear energy is a form of potential energy present in the nucleus. So nuclear energy is in the nucleus of an atom. Nuclear energy can be obtained by nuclear fission or by nuclear fusion. In nuclear fission, the nuclei of heavy elements split into smaller parts, releasing a very large amount of energy. For example, atoms of uranium and thorium undergo nuclear fission. In nuclear fusion, many nuclei fuse together to form a heavier nucleus, which releases energy. For example, hydrogen atoms fuse to form helium to release energy. Chemical energy is a form of potential energy stored in the chemical bonds of atoms that make up molecules. This energy is released when these bonds break and new bonds are formed. For example, food and fuels have chemical potential energy. Another kind of chemical energy is the energy stored when matter changes between a solid, a liquid, and a gas. So this is very common in the human body and in other processes too. Gravitational energy, that is potential energy possessed by an object because of its position in Earth's gravitational force field. So that is like the ball on top of the hill. Because it is placed on top of that hill, it has a certain potential gravitational energy. And when water is stored in an elevated tank, it has gravitational energy that can be used to perform work as well. Thermal energy, that is a form of kinetic energy, comes from heat. When the temperature of molecules increases, the molecules are vibrating faster. When molecules constantly move or vibrate, they possess kinetic energy. And living things generate thermal energy when they perform activities. So when you're running, when you're exercising, when you're doing housework, you are hotter. You tend to notice that your body is warm if you're burning off a lot of energy. Electrical energy is produced by electrons or ions moving through a substance, and it's a form of kinetic energy as well. An example is electrical energy generated in a person's body, is the electrical impulses that neurons generate during signal transduction. So neurons are very tiny, and there are very small electrical energy exchanges. Radiant energy is the last energy in this group. It's a form of kinetic energy as well, and it's present in electromagnetic waves. It can travel through space and reach any place in the universe, the entire universe. Light, ultraviolet rays, radiant heat, microwaves, X-rays, and radio waves are examples of radiant energy. The electromagnetic spectrum includes all the waves that span from radio waves to gamma radiation. Electromagnetic radiation includes these radio waves, microwaves, infrared waves, visible light, ultraviolet waves, X-rays, and gamma rays. It contains massless particles called photons that travel in the form of waves with the speed of light. These photons contain energy, and this energy defines the type of radiation. So in this diagram here, you see the length of waves compared to one another. Radio waves, longer waves, see how these are longer, and then gamma rays, these are very short, smaller waves. So now we're giving tiles to drag to correct boxes to complete with the pairs. Here are the answers for those. The body stores lipids ingested as fat and uses this energy when needed. So that is chemical energy being stored until later use. A person's hat falls off and lands on the ground. That's gravitational. A wave of water pushes a surfer to shore. So that's just mechanical energy. A burner on a stove heats up a tea kettle, thermal. You're using heat. A power plant splits atoms to generate power for a city. That's nuclear. A nerve sends an impulse, an electrical impulse to another nerve. So that's electrical energy. A plant absorbs the sun's rays to start the process of photosynthesis. So dealing with rays of light, photons, radiant energy. Now we're going to get into the laws of thermodynamics, which is a branch of science that deals with energy and work in a system. And a system is just a way to refer to a certain set of objects. So we can refer to the human body as a system. You can refer to the earth as a system. And that just means we're dealing with all the parts within that object. So the laws of thermodynamics explain how energy is transferred within these systems. The first law is known as the conservation law. And I think you may have already heard this before, but energy can neither be created nor destroyed. It is merely transformed into other forms. Energy that is present in living systems, for example, is always transformed from one to the other form. While energy may change its form and get lost as random molecular motion, it doesn't completely disappear. Energy also can't be created. It has to come from somewhere. So the total amount of energy in the universe remains constant because one form will always transform into another form. I think that is pretty cool. And let's look at an example of how that works in our own bodies. When we eat, we use mechanical energy to chew, and this breaks down the food we're eating. Chemical energy in the food that we're eating is stored in the body as potential energy, or it's used to perform different body functions. The different processes in the body use some of this chemical energy and convert it into mechanical energy. The remaining energy is dissipated in the form of thermal energy or heat. So, for example, the body heats up during exercise because it's using a lot of energy. So, the body releases heat energy into its surroundings. Getting into the second law of thermodynamics is known as the law of entropy. Entropy. During every energy transfer, some amount of energy is converted to an unusable form, mostly as heat. More heat in a system increases the disorderliness of the system. Entropy is the disorder or chaos in a system. The second law helps us understand the internal order in systems. Without energy input, the systems will eventually lose their order. Systems need a constant supply of energy to work. Living things have a huge source of energy on which the entire planet depends, and that is the sun, of course. Plants convert sunlight into chemical energy using photosynthesis and then store it in sugar molecules. The chemical energy is then transferred into the molecule adenosine triphosphate, or ATP. It's a little easier to say, from which energy is obtained for most chemical reactions in the body. Every reaction releases heat energy that comes through the random motion of atoms and molecules involved in the process. Increased temperature is an indicator of how fast the particles move. Okay, so sun, plants take the sun energy, convert it into sugar molecules, and then we eat the plants, right? It's all a cycle. So here you're given a video about life and the second law of thermodynamics. In a meadow, grasshoppers eat grass for energy. Birds eat the grasshoppers. Use the laws of thermodynamics to explain how energy from the sun is transformed and passed from one organism to another to eventually power the muscles and nerves that the birds use to fly. And here we go. Here's a sample answer. So, given the fact that energy is never lost or gained, and it always transforms from one form to another, here it goes. Grass transforms radiant energy from the sun into chemical energy so the grass can grow. Grasshoppers consume the chemical energy inside the grass. Birds consume the grasshoppers. They use some of the chemical energy obtained from the grasshoppers to send signals down their nerves. That requires electrical energy. These signals allow their muscles to move. As the birds fly, they use some form of chemical energy to power their flight. The breakdown of these biomolecules releases heat energy. So there's a lot going on, if you can't already tell. Here's a lesson activity. You're given a simulation in a skate park. And you're asked to predict what would happen with the potential energy and kinetic energy change when a skateboarder is at the top or the bottom of the hill? When do they have the most potential energy? And when do they have the most kinetic energy? And I'll give you a hint. If one energy form is the highest, then the other energy has to be lowest at that point. So when potential energy is highest, kinetic energy is lowest, and then when kinetic energy is highest, potential energy is lowest too. And you're also dealing with friction. In our universe, we have friction. So things would behave differently if there was no friction. But friction means that it determines how much of the energy is converted into unusable energy. And without friction, you would have none of that. So energy could be completely transformed from one form to another without any of this unusable heat. But since we do have friction, higher friction leads to more unusable energy. So, okay, so part C says that the simulation shows that only the changes in energy that causes the motion of the skateboarder. But on the inside of the skateboarder's body, there's even more stuff going on. So can you explain some of that? And you can use some of the terminology we used in the last sample answer with the bird and the grasshopper. Very similar writing. And then you self-evaluate yourself. And then we move on to biomes. So biomes, all living things use energy for various processes. From the smallest ecosystem to the largest biome, the energy to fuel life processes comes from the sun. Let's explore what biomes and ecosystems are and take a look at what the organisms look like and behave like in those biomes. A biome is a large geographical area with a particular climate zone. Biomes include plant and animal life adapted to the climatic conditions of that region. And we have 5 major biomes based on their climate and biogeography. Biogeography. It's a good word. We have aquatic, desert, forest, grassland, and tundra. Tundra. Here we have a colored map of the main biomes. Some scientists also classify biomes based on variations in climate, wildlife, and flora. So the types of plants there. They consider different types of forests to be different biomes. A tropical rainforest has different wildlife than a taiga forest located in a colder region. So tropical rainforests and taiga forests are different biomes. And you can see that here. Tropical rainforest, taiga. Taiga is colder, and then we have tropical rainforests in the more, well, tropical regions. An ecosystem is a community of organisms that live in a specific region and interact with each other and with abiotic factors. Abiotic factors are not biotic, if that makes sense. So non-living things. Ecosystems can be small or large within a biome. There can be a number of ecosystems of organisms that closely depend on each other. Ecosystems consist of biotic and abiotic factors. All organisms, such as plants, animals, fungi, and bacteria, make up the biotic factors, Abiotic factors include water, air, soil, and temperature. So bio, think of life. Anything that's alive are biotic. Anything that's not alive is abiotic. And organisms are interconnected for survival. They depend on each other to obtain energy and shelter. A change in any one species could affect other organisms in the ecosystem. For example, if the number of predators rises, the number of prey animals may decrease. As a result, predators may have less available food. So here we go, this nice little ecosystem. But everything's interconnected and interrelated. And here's a way to look at it, like a food pyramid in a certain ecosystem. Grass, grasshopper, bird, snake, owl. Conservation of energy is an important aspect of ecosystems. The entire process of the flow or transfer of energy from one organism to another begins with the sun. I keep saying that, but it's so important. Plants absorb sunlight to make food using photosynthesis. Herbivores consume these plants. Carnivores hunt the herbivores. And tiny microorganisms such as bacteria and fungi feed on dead organisms and bring about their decomposition. So when chemical energy is used for body functions, it transforms into heat. And this energy pyramid describes the transfer of energy from one organism to another within an ecosystem. Each layer shows an organism's relationship to others in a food chain. So here we're given another question. Wildlife can be scarce in many large, densely populated cities. A few plants and animals can be found in these areas. For example, rats, mice, pigeons, cockroaches, and other insects are common in cities. Trees can grow by sidewalks or in local parks. Some cities even have small populations of coyotes within city limits. Do you think these cities meet the definition of an ecosystem? Explain. And in our sample, answer, yes, because these organisms likely depend on each other for survival, that is an ecosystem. For example, plants and grasses can make food for insects and other small animals, such as rats. Carnivores can eat the small animals and obtain energy from them. Humans are also living things, so they contribute to the ecosystems of these organisms. They can provide food for rats and insects. Humans can also water the plants. So everybody's interrelated. Major biomes. So let's discuss those bigger major biomes found on Earth. Aquatic biomes comprise all the water bodies on Earth. They cover nearly 75% of Earth's surface. So over 70% of Earth's surface contains water. So naturally, these aquatic biomes cover most of the Earth. They can be classified into two types, freshwater and marine. Freshwater biomes have a salt concentration of less than 1%. So think of lakes, ponds, rivers, and streams. 700 species of fish live in freshwater biomes. Animals such as turtles, crocodiles, and hippopotamuses also depend on freshwater biomes. Vegetation includes grass, water lilies, and sedges, which is very grass-like plants. Marine aquatic, think of oceans, estuaries, and coral reefs, like Finding Nemo. Make up the saltwater biome. And salt content in these waters varies from almost 0% to 3.5%. So there's much more, there tends to be more salt in marine aquatic biomes. And these oceans are divided into separate zones, depending on the amount of light they receive. So coral reefs are found in shallow, warm sections of the ocean. Estuaries are areas where freshwater streams merge with ocean. Saltwater biomes have water plants such as phytoplankton. Animals that live here include fish, whales, and dolphins. Many large ocean animals, such as whales, have a thick layer of fat called blubber. And this layer of fat helps them survive in the colder waters, keeping them warm. Desert biome. Deserts cover about 20% of the Earth, about 1/5. Temperatures are very hot during the day, but they also get very cold at night. They receive little rainfall, and they're generally the driest biomes. Plants that need little water, such as short shrubs or cacti, grow in these deserts. Camels and other animals that conserve water can survive in deserts. Some animals, such as snakes, burrow underground during the day and hunt at night when it is cooler. So you see, everything is adapted to best survive in the desert that live there. Forest biome, they cover about 1/3 of Earth's land area, and they hold about 70% of the carbon present in living things. Forest biomes can be classified according to seasonality and latitude. There are 3 major types of forests classified according to latitude. We have tropical rainforests, temperate forests, and boreal or taiga forests. The tropical rainforests are the closest to the equator. They have high temperatures and they receive plenty of rainfall. Their dense canopies of vegetation allow little sunlight to reach the ground. So this minimizes the amount of undergrowth or things that can grow on the ground itself. Orchids are common in tropical rainforests. A wide variety of birds that thrive on nuts and fruits live in these forests, as well as monkeys, squirrels, and other animals. Temperate forests are located in eastern North America, northeastern Asia, and western and central Europe. Rainforests near coastal areas are temperate rainforests. So they're kind of like a hybrid, a mix. They have much cooler and milder temperatures than tropical rainforests. Summers are hot and winters are cold. Trees in these forests have broad leaves and they are shed in autumn. The leaves grow back in spring when warm weather returns. And trees in these forests include oak, hickory, beech, ferns, flowering shrubs, and other low plants cover the forest floor. You see squirrels, rabbits, skunks, birds, deer, mountain lions, and black bears in these forests. Now, boreal or taiga forests, these are the liest biome on Earth, actually, stretching across North America and Eurasia, a combination of Europe and Asia continent. The taiga has long, cold winters and short, warm summers. It receives plenty of snow and rainfall. Because of the heavy snowfall, the majority of trees that grow there are conifers. These trees have dark-colored wax-coated needles for leaves. The needles prevent prevent the trees from freezing and allow them to maximize sunlight absorption. Conifers include spruces, firs, and pines. So think of pine trees when you're thinking of these wax-coated needles. These extreme conditions make it unfavorable for many animals to live in the taiga. Most of them migrate to warmer places for the winter, while others have developed characteristics such as thick fur. So think of mammals here being bears, red deer, and moose. Grassland biome. A lot of us are familiar with grasslands and temperate forests. Grasslands are predominant on the major continents. They exist in both temperate and tropical areas. They're wide, open spaces with grasses and few trees. And we have two types, tropical savannas and temperate grasslands. Tropical savannas, think of Lion King, right? They have a dry season and a wet season with consistently warm temperatures throughout the year. Common vegetation includes grasses such as salvia, wheat, barley, and oats. The animals that live here are generally giraffes, zebras, buffaloes, kangaroos, mice, moles, lions, leopards, hyenas, and elephants. Whereas in temperate grasslands, trees and large shrubs are absent. Grasses are the dominant vegetation. They have hot summers and cold winters with moderate rainfall. Grasses such as purple needle grass and blue grama, not sure how to say that actually, can be seen here. Animals that live in temperate grasslands are similar to those found in savannas. Tundra. So the tundra is the coldest biome we have on Earth here. It lies near the North Pole in the northern hemisphere and occupies 20% of Earth's land surface. So a fifth of Earth's land surface is covered by tundra. Winters are long and extremely cold, with temperatures that can drop to negative 94 degrees Fahrenheit. That is pretty cold. Not a lot of life can sustain that. Summers last only 2 months, with temperatures rarely reaching above 54 degrees Fahrenheit. Such cold conditions have resulted in permafrost, which is permanently frozen ground just below the surface. Deep-rooted plants and trees cannot grow in permafrost because their roots just can't get past the frozen layer. The tundra's sparse vegetation includes shrubs, mosses, heaths, and lichens that grow in the thin topsoil. So they don't have to go very deep to sustain themselves. Some animals in the tundra hibernate during the winter or migrate to warmer places. Tundra animals include polar bears, caribou, Arctic foxes, and Arctic hares. So we're given a question. Polar bears live in the tundra. They obtain their energy almost exclusively from eating other animals, so carnivore. But they do eat some vegetation. Black bears that live in temperate forests tend to be more omnivorous, eating a wide variety of plants and animals for energy. An adaptation is a behavior or an anatomical structure that can help an organism survive in its environment. Why are diet choices important adaptations for these animals' survival in their biomes? Based on the images, what other adaptations do these animals display? So, you could talk about their fur, you could talk about their diet, In the tundra, vegetation is rare, so polar bears had to adapt to eat a heavily animal-based diet because there's just not a lot of plant life there anyway. But in the temperate forest, there are more plants available, so the black bear can have both vegetation and animal as a food source. Their colors are also adaptations. Polar bear blends in with the snowy background. Black bears blend in with the trees and the temperate background. And this helps them hunt for prey. Now we're getting into science in the news. Clean energy. So we rely on plants and animals to energize our bodies, but we also rely on natural resources to power our cars and homes. Fossil fuels, such as oil and natural gas, come from plants and animals that lived a long, long time ago. But burning these fuels releases pollutants into the air, as well as extra carbon dioxide, a major driving force for climate change. So scientists are looking for cleaner energy sources that are better for the environment. One of them being biomass. And this comes from living matter. And we'll get into that. Biomass. So energy resources can be classified into two groups, renewable and non-renewable. Renewable resources have the capacity to renew or replenish themselves to provide a constant source of energy. Sunlight is an example. Non-renewable resources have limited reserves and they can be exhausted. So fossil fuels such as oil, natural gas, they can be exhausted. Biomass is a renewable source of energy, and it's generated from decaying plant matter and animal waste. Logging and crop residues, sawdust, organic waste, energy crops, and even chicken litter are sources of biomass. But wood is the largest source of biomass. Biomass contains stored energy from the sun and can be used to produce thermal energy. It's a cheap and readily available source of energy. It makes up about 12% of all renewable energy in the United States. So here we're given a diagram. Biomass produces heat energy. The energy produced by heating biomass can be used to run steam turbines to produce electricity. It can also be used to turn feedstocks into liquid biofuels. An example is the use of jatropha plants to develop biodiesel. These plants produce seeds with an oil content of about 37%. The oil from the seeds can be burned to obtain fuel. Garbage and waste products can be placed inside anaerobic digesters to produce biogas, which is an excellent source of fuel. Crops such as corn and sugarcane can be used to produce fuel for use in vehicles. But on a large scale, biomass is currently obtained from wood. If plants can be replaced, biomass can be a long-term, sustainable energy source without threatening forests. So we see all the possible ways that biomass can be converted or collected. Raw material, wood, paper, plants, sawdust, molasses, material products, consumers, animals, material obtained from food, waste, decomposition, dung. So you guys know what that is, I'm sure. But yeah, this can all be used for energy production. So we're given another question. Biofuels are fuels derived directly from living matter. And we're given an article to read about a scientist who discovered how one bacterium can transform plants into usable energy. Today, many people read only the headlines of news stories instead of taking time to read the entire article. Man, that is so true. This habit can lead to misconceptions about the actual story. What misconceptions could someone have by reading just the headline of this article? How are these misconceptions clarified if the entire article is read? So this is very careful. You have to be very careful with science and the news, because a lot of science news sources, they will use headlines that are, let's say, controversial or very in your face. Like they're trying to just get your attention. So it may not even be completely true when you read the actual article. So like a headline would be like, uh, are all plants capable of sustaining life on Earth? And or just like it doesn't make sense. Like they're just being overly hyperbolic. Like, can we get rid of all fossil fuels right now? Well, no, not right now. It's going to be a process where we transition to more renewable energy resources and slowly decrease our use of non-renewable resources. But I'm sure you know what I mean. The news just tries to get your attention by any means possible sometimes, and that can lead to less accurate article titles. And here we're given the sample answer. The headline suggests that using bacteria to turn plants into biofuel is a simple process. But reading the article reveals that there were many different types of scientists involved in the process. It also gives the misconception that this process is so simple that it's ready to be used. But the last paragraph of the article states that this process has only been done on a small scale, and transforming the process for the entire industry would likely be quite difficult. So, yeah, that's similar to what I said. Yeah, when people that don't know what they're talking about necessarily write articles, they sometimes make assumptions and they're not true or not completely true. So you have to be careful, be skeptical. But yeah, that is our tutorial for the day. I hope I helped you understand a bit more about energy and ecosystems and biomes and clean energy in the form of biomass. But that is it for today. Thank you all, and I will see you all later. Bye-bye. See ya.